When I pulled up, my car was emptied. I loved that O Team grabbed all my stuff and took me in. It made it so quick and so easy and painless, and really started me off on a good foot. My RAs met me in my room and introduced themselves, and were really friendly and really outgoing, and I really felt like I was already welcome. My name was already on the door, and that meant a lot to me.
The big moving day, and you know, they have all the students outside taking all your stuff and putting it in your dorm room. So that was a little bit of a shock, and especially coming from a small town to coming from a place like this where everybody's, you know, part of a community, and so it was good. I remember hanging out with, you know, on the floor we had 40 different guys living on the floor, and we hung out. We all hung out together. You know, we weren't best of friends, but we all did things together. But after that, you know, as soon as you're kind of required to live in dorms your first year, and then going into your second year, a lot of those people move off campus and you kind of lose touch with them. And it's the people that kind of stick on campus, or, you know, if that's what you did.
My close group of friends did change quite a bit over the years, because I was in the music program. I was in classes with people in their second year, in their third year, in their fourth year, in their fifth year, who, you know, had to take that class that was only offered once every 2 or 3 years or whatever. And so I did get to know a number of students in a number of years of university. And also through residence life, I did get to know people at different stages and in different years. And so my group of friends changed vastly from my first year to my fifth year.
And I thought I was only going to do 1 year of Greek, and so in my second year I didn't take Greek 300, and then another student came along, Marcus Wilhelm, and he said, Craig, I want to take Greek 300, but Dr. Dolly says he'll only teach it if there are 2 students in the class. And so I was convinced to take Greek 300, which was really good of Dr. Dolly, because he probably did that as a course overload.
Me and a few friends jumping in our car here at 10 o'clock at night and driving to Sunshine and sleeping in our tent in the parking lot at Sunshine, and getting up at, you know, getting there at, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning, and sleeping in our tent, and then getting up the next morning and getting on the gondola and going up to Sunshine and skiing our faces off all day, and then being back here by 10 o'clock the next night.
University students are very similar to kindergarten students in the kinds of fun that they have. Mud and glue and sidewalk chalk and tug of war. These are the kinds of things that a lot of university students, at least when I went to school here, or at least I guess the crew that I hung out with, those are the kinds of things that they love to do. And so I did find that university was sort of a revival of childhood in some ways. That it was acceptable to have a coloring party. And so we'd get together in the floor lounge and color pictures and drink coffee, you know, as a study break. And I found that the more stressed that we were, the more ridiculous the things that we'd do.
Lunch in the cafeteria was always a highlight, a little chance to visit with other people and be with them in that context.
It was, well, you wanted to eat, and the food was fine. In fact, it was good in lots of ways. But it was a time to gather again, time to go, you know, meet with friends, and then go off do your class thing, and you know, have lunch, and then there was always some sort of training, you know, whether it's canoe team training or ski team training or running team training.
It's hard to pick my favorite activity just because there were so many that I loved. One of my favorites was hanging out in the cafeteria, actually, especially if you were sitting at a big group of big table with a group of people that maybe you didn't necessarily know really well, or maybe half of them you knew well. So you get started on a conversation, and you'd be finishing up your dinner, and soon enough they'd be like wanting to turn off the lights, and you'd still be there visiting with these people, maybe some of which you didn't really know well before you sat down at the table, you know. But I think that's a great part about our campus, is the cafeteria is a sort of a hub of activity.
There's also a tradition of the guys' party for the girls and the girls' party for the boys. This was pre-formal time. So all the women on campus would get together and throw this huge party for the boys, and it would involve decorating the gym up to the nines in some sort of theme, and it would end with a dance and some sort of talent show, and the men would do the same thing for the women. And this was a fairly major social activity throughout the course of the year.
I loved Rocky Road. That was like one of my favorite holidays of the year. It was one of my favorite Sundays of the year. I loved being able to get the gym looking great and put up all these pictures, all these posters, and invite kids from the community. I loved reading stories and playing on the swinging thing, which we can no longer do, but the what are those called? The Tarzan swings. We used to have one of those. And all kinds of unique activities, and I loved how the students loved that too, and partly because I did observe students playing childish games on their own, being their own kindergarten student, but then actually being able to play with students or playing with kids was great. That was probably one of my favorite things.
And here I remember during the first week there was this tradition called the Viking Rodeo, which was a highly competitive intramural event. All the residences were divided into teams, and we would gather in the gymnasium and for all these games, these very highly competitive games, and there would be house cheers and this sort of stuff. And the whole thing was presided over by a real Viking, Udo Johansson from Bashaw. He was about 6'8", and we dressed him up in this helmet with the horns, and he had a shield, and he brought his axe along, and he presided over the games.
We definitely pulled a lot of pranks. I remember stealing one of my friend's doors my very first year, and his girlfriend was quite angry with us. I remember doing that one. I remember taking saran wrap and pouring cereal in between the door and saran wrap, so when the guy opened his door in the morning, his room was filled with cereal because it all poured into his room. And then my favorite one is one night when I was an RA in my third year. I woke up, it was during quiet hours, and I woke up in the middle of the night and I could hear some music in the hallway, and I went down the hall, and one of my guys was sitting in the hall with, what is it when you take the paper and you put it in paper mache. He was doing paper mache over another student's door, and I laughed so much I couldn't even get mad at him, so I just told him to turn his music down, and I was like, well, make sure no one's in the room, it's kind of a fire hazard. And he's like, no, he left already for the weekend. So even me and the other RA participated in that one. We paper mache'd over his door, and then to hide the paper mache, we duct taped completely over the door as well after. And so all you had when you came back was all this writing and all this duct tape over his door. And then him trying to take it down, but it was rock hard underneath because it was all paper mache'd.
I mean, there was, the typical garbage can full of water outside someone's door that falls in on them. And, I remember from time to time we, would move someone's whole room out onto Oldie's Crossing on the bridge there. And, there was, I don't know, can't specifics now, but I sort of had this notion that, there was always a prank going on, and mostly they were harmless. And mostly they were funny, but you had to be careful once in a while.
The better ones, on Oldie's Crossing, the wooden bridge that went across the ravine, there was a landing in the middle, and I recall one day we took Murray Arnold's entire room and put it out on that landing. Everything, light fixtures and the medicine cabinet, the works, we moved out into the middle of the landing in the middle of winter, and so that was...
The girls were definitely there as well, and I think they knew when to draw the line a little bit more because the guys would tend to go overboard, but the girls were definitely in there as well. Yeah.